Today, Garmin have launched two new versions of their flagship cycling GPS computer, the Edge 1040 and the Edge 1040 Solar. In today's video, I'll give a quick run through of all the new features on the Edge 1040 series. I'll give you some initial hands-on feedback and a quick summary of my experience with these units. Now, they're the two parts of this video that you want to watch if you're short on time. And then I'll get into some hands-on side-by-side with the new interface. We'll go out on the road and have a look at the new ClimbPro updates and some pacing strategy features they've added to this. We'll have a look at the solar charging stats, which are quite interesting here in Australia this time of year. And I'll finish up with a quick discussion about the rider focus metrics that are now appearing on these head units. Okay, kicking off with the key feature updates on both Edge 1040 units. They both now come with USB-C. They have alloy quarter-turn tabs, so these tabs won't be snapping off anytime soon. The units now have multi-band GNSS technology. Some people will call this multi-GPS, but GPS is just one of the satellite positioning systems that it uses. This can now use multiple for better accuracy. There's an improved battery life. They're claiming up to 35 hours under normal use, up to 45 hours with solar charging, even more with the battery save mode. Speaking of the battery save mode, that has been redesigned. We'll have a closer look at that in just a few moments. There's an updated user interface with the menus, summary pages, etc. There's been ClimbPro updates with gradient colors and some more details over on Garmin Connect on the web. There's a number of rider-focused performance guides and metrics. And another thing I found was device transfers has now been removed from these units, which is a good thing. That never actually worked at all. Onto the Solar Edition, there is Power Glass with its solar panels top and bottom, and Garmin have stated there is 15% photovoltaic coverage on the screen itself. The Solar Edition also has 64 gigabytes of data storage, up from 32 gigabytes on the standard 1040 base unit, and it also comes with a mountain bike mount and silicone case. A close look at the size and weight, and for that I'll pull out the 1030, the 1030 Plus, and now what we're looking at today, the 1040 Solar. You can see here all three units looking very much the same. The 1040 is just a little bit taller by a few millimeters. I'd need to pull out the millimeter ruler to get the exact measurements of that, but it's not noticeable on the bars. And some of the screen bezel is now solar panel here and here. For the weight, let's start off with the older unit as comparison. 124 grams for the 1030, 1030 Plus coming in at 125 grams, and the new unit, the one we're looking at today, 1040 Solar, hitting the scales at 134 grams. Onto the pricing, and I only have USD pricing at the moment, so the base level unit of the 1040 comes in at $599 US. The bundle, which is the base 1040 unit with a heart rate monitor, speed and cadence sensor, comes in at $699, and the Solar, which is the premium edition of the 1040, comes with the mountain bike mount, silicone case, and the additional 32 gigabytes of memory, bringing it to 64 for storage of more global maps. Onto my initial hands-on and feedback with this unit. Look, Garmin knows this game. This is not new territory for them, and this is not a ground-level rebuild of a system. It's a nice refresh. The Edge units have hundreds and hundreds of options and configurations that I could go through. In this video, I won't be covering them all. This is just the key points from my time with this unit on the front of the bike. So initial setup was straightforward. It duplicated all my Edge 1030 Plus settings over onto this unit. So all the sensors, all the screens, everything came over, and I was up and running in just a few minutes. That was a good experience. The new interface was easy to navigate my way around. It was familiar, but just a little bit different. I do like it. And going back to the old interface on the 1030 Plus or the 1030 feels a little dated. So this new user interface and user experience is from the 1040 onwards and won't be retrofitted to the older units. Data recording was good. Power meter data, heart rate data, Di2, SRAM, ETAP, access gear info. Again, Garmin know this game. Their code is mature. Their testing is good. GPS tracking was excellent on this. In some cases, the 1040 was slightly tighter or better tracking than the 1030 Plus, which took a bit of a detour here on this turn. So the multi-band GNSS was doing its thing. I found the screen on the 1040 a little better to read than the 1030 Plus. It had more contrast and the new fonts were easier to read out on the road. I had no issues with the touch screen, even with winter gloves. Garmin have definitely come a long way since the early Edge 820 units with those touch screens. Routing and rerouting worked as expected when following a course. Garmin have been doing this for quite a few years, so I didn't expect any surprises there. And in performing a point-to-point test by putting in an address 100 kilometers away on the 1040, 1030 and 1030 Plus, the 1040 came out on top with the route calculation. So this thing is a little quicker at processing too. The solar charging was very interesting. We're only a few days away here from winter solstice, and in southern Australia, the sun isn't rising very high in the sky. However, the solar charging did work, and I do love the concept of using solar for devices that are out in the sun quite a lot. Later in the video, I'll cover off some numbers of the charge levels this was getting when it was outside. The ClimbPro update's been neat with more detail on gradients, however this still does require a route to be preloaded to work. The power guidance on a preloaded course was, well, I'll talk more about this later in the video. There's also new rider metrics which can be shown on screen, such as performance and stamina. To be honest, I didn't use those at all. I was more about the hardware than the hardware trying to tell me how I was feeling. I've got that covered for now, maybe something I'll look at in a future video. So that's what's new and my experience with the new Edge 1040 Solar out on the road. Okay, with those two sections out of the way, let's have a deeper dive into the new interface with a side-by-side with the Edge 1030 Plus up against the Edge 1040 Solar. On to a look at the new user interface, and for that we'll go side by side with the older 1030 Plus and we'll do a boot up test and see who takes the victory there. Alrighty, the 1040 Solar gets the chocolates there, booting into the new home screen, I guess you'd call it. And this comes through a few seconds later. So very similar to what they offer, the bike profile, navigation, training, etc. Just how you get to them is a little different. Over here, it's now along the top where we select the bike profile on a bar rather than a circle, taking up a ton of real estate on the screen. So all the settings over here have been migrated with the setup process. Very easy and very straightforward. All the sensors, etc. Okay, I'll leave that on road for now. Over here on the 1040, I have the last course added on the screen. We can scroll down. There is a compass doing its thing. Training, history, notifications, weather, etc. They can also be configured and rearranged. If you saw that pop across there, that just gave us a little hint that these things can be deleted if need be. So history or training by sliding across. We can also add some more too. That one there would be quite interesting to find out when sunrise and sunset is. There's not too much daylight happening here at the moment. So 10 hours of daylight, 7:30 sunrise, 5:15 sunset. Not what I'd call optimal for testing solar on anything, including our house, which has been fitted with solar recently. Okay, so the navigation is very similar, just a little different. Pulling down from the top on both, again, both very, very familiar. One thing I'll quickly dive into here is the battery save mode. So clicking on the battery, same way to get to the battery saver mode on both units, even with the new interface. But this has changed quite a bit over here. No longer does battery save mode turn off the screen and then come awake with certain alerts. So if I was to turn that on over here, the screen goes dark to save battery, and then these are the alerts that wake the screen up once it goes to sleep. So no longer is that the case over here. If I enable that now, again the screen dims, so it reduces the backlight, it hides the map, switches the satellite systems to GPS only, but the screen won't go to sleep over here. Navigation prompts, etc. will still pop up on screen, but it's been completely, I guess you'd call it re-engineered. More information over there in the top corner, just explaining what's going on with that mode. Battery remaining with that, 81 hours. We'll turn that off. Battery remaining here is saying 8 hours. I have everything enabled and I have the screen brightness right up to record this video, so don't be too concerned with that. Now, to get back to the screen setting that I had, I have to go through the settings. So bear with me as I change the settings over here back to what they were to record this video. And with that, we get a bit of a walkthrough with the settings. It's system, display, brightness auto, backlight stays on, auto brightness, I didn't want that on, I wanted brightness 100%, cool, we're good. Okay, we're back, screen capture is on. Back, so notice the back button over here is down here, the back button now is up the top over here. So just very similar, just a few things being a little different. That's really about it for the navigation. There's a few additional things such as my stats over here, my training status, training zones, power, performance, etc. There's also Connect IQ on here. So the Connect IQ store can be accessed directly. At this point in time, this is a pre-release unit. I'm filming this a few days prior to launch. So if I jump over to the Connect IQ store, there's not a lot to choose from. Something I'll need to loop back on once this goes live, and we can select things like the car counter, which I use for the radar. Very, very handy. At the moment, only 3 apps available to install directly here. One other thing with the sensors, again, you saw it just flip across there. You can delete sensors by just dragging them across. So if I wanted to delete, let's remove SPD, Asioma, that's short for. So my SPD, delete and gone. Whereas over here, To delete these, I've got to go into the sensor, hit remove, hit confirm, and that's now done. Okay, back to this main page here. Again, navigation through these, all very much the same. We'll stop course because I want to load up the course and show you something about that in just a moment. That was already preloaded from just before I started recording the video. Missed notifications will be on screen. Emoji support over here is a little tricky. You'll get emojis on this screen, but you won't get emojis on the little notification screen. Just be aware if you're sending llamas or eggplants to your best friends. Weather and whatever else we have configured here on the list. Alrighty, back to the home screen, which is new and improved over here, and onto navigation. So we'll pull this up, we'll go courses, courses. You see something over here. It has a little map of the course that I've already written on here. That's pretty cool. Saved courses, I need to go find the same map over here. I haven't loaded all my courses onto here. I just wanted to use that one today. And while this loads, check this out. And what it's done as a summary straight away, you've got the map, you've got the elevation. Here we go, that's the one there. So using exactly the same button over here to load the route, it doesn't give me much information. I get a ton here. This is also scrollable, so I can go down and get the summary, course demands, climbs, and power guide. I'll do a quick review of those in just one moment. If I wanted to load the map over here as a preview, I'd need to click on that. It will do an overlay, but the map's already shown on this one. Pretty cool. Elevation profile, again with its skewed ratios, same kind of thing. This to me looks a lot better. I'm definitely not riding up peaks that tall. They're about that big out on the road. And scrolling down here, we get course demands. That's new over here. This short course requires high aerobic capacity for optimum performance. It's telling me, I guess it depends how hard you want to ride, the bike you're on, if you're riding solo with a group, you name it. It's a lot that goes into this. So it's pretty bold of it to think it knows exactly how I'm going to ride this course, though it was pretty accurate. Onto the climbs, which is the ClimbPro side of things, which still does require a preloaded course. And from here, it's detected all the same climbs on both, but it's when we go into the climb detail, you'll go, aha, aha, this is looking a lot better. A lot more detail here on the ClimbPro. And as we cruise through climb number 2, climb number 3, 4, and 5. Oh, well, this one has 2 colors. This is much better though to follow along. Very similar to what Wahoo have done with their gradient colors. Not quite to the level of detail though of what Hammerhead have done with their predictive path technology, which I absolutely love for free riding. Okay, we'll go back here on that. Again, back to review. Scrolling down on this one and the power guide. Now, this is in addition to the course that you're following. If you apply a power guide to a course, this course right here, it will tell you how hard you have to ride. It will micromanage your power output. Think best bike split, but probably not quite as good. I'll definitely need to dig more into this. So here's what I've discovered with this so far. You need to tell it how hard you want to ride, so the goal effort from easier to hard. So if we go easier, it'll recalculate, or harder. There we go, let's go for that. It needs to know your FTP, whatever that is. It needs to know your riding position, upright, lowered, or aero. It needs to know your gear weight. It needs to know the terrain, although it should have that from the maps, but okay, we'll tell it that it's a road. And from there, it will give you your splits. It will automatically split the course up. Now, this is different to ClimbPro. ClimbPro split this course into 5 climbs. That's it. This splits the course into multiple sections and gives you a target power for each. So this has split the course into 30 sections. And you can see here for the segments, the suggested power and the gradient. So for the negative 6.9%, coasting is where you want to be. Now, is this as good as best bike split? I don't know. Is this something I'd use on every ride? Absolutely not. It's really only applicable if you're going out riding solo. If you're in a group, the group really dictates the pace. If you're in a race or a mass start event, you're not going to be spending your time with your nose on your bike computer being told what to do. That kind of micromanagement, save that for training days. But then if we're training out on the road, we're doing workouts. So I think this is an interesting value add. I'll definitely need to dig more into it and definitely need to do a head-to-head comparison with best bike split. So once you've done all that work there, you hit ride. And we don't want to navigate to the start of the course. And away we go. What we have on screen here is the pacing guide, and I'll explain what I understand of this in just a few moments out on the road. But first, let's have a look at this new ClimbPro doing its thing. Alrighty, here I am on the 5 climbs route that I use quite often for testing GPS units and ClimbPro functionality. So I have both the 1030 Plus and the 1040 Solar on the handlebars, and I'm using these screen captures to see what's going on. So we have the ClimbPro data there on screen. We have 5 climbs. Looking at the first climb, you can see there on the right, the 1040 Solar, giving a lot more detail of what's to come. Side-by-siding the elevation profile, and the 1040 again wins here. It's bolder colours and just what I think is a little better layout, easier to read. Okay, onto the ClimbPro side of things as it kicks in, and again, a little easier to read with this redesign. The distance to go is bigger and bolder, the ascent remaining also the same, easier to read by just looking down at your bars. I found just a quick glance down and I had the information that I needed rather than trying to squint and see that distance to go. As you see there over on the left on the 1030 Plus, is a little small sometimes to read, especially when you get into the red zone. Okay, jumping ahead to the top or near top of this climb, and one thing to note that the distance to go on the 1040 is in kilometers, so 0.22 kilometers, whereas on the 1030 Plus it was in meters. On to what I know so far, or what I could figure out with this power guide feature of the 1040 without any documentation. Just loading it up on the road and riding. What we have on screen here is, well, this will count down up here as you complete the 1 of 30 segments on this route that I'm doing. It's got 3 seconds power there, the guided power that I should be holding, and I believe that's the average power there. This line here is a visual indication of what's coming up in regards to your effort. There is the elevation profile. Guide average, 9, I don't know what that's about, and power average, look, I'm going to have to consult some manuals once they're published on this. But one thing that was quite interesting was the combination of the Power Guide and ClimbPro coming together to give you a lot of information on screen. So again, we have the segment counting down, we have 3 seconds power, the guide power, the split average that I've been writing for this split or for this climb, and the ClimbPro information on screen. So quite the overload of information being presented there without any prior knowledge or documentation on exactly what was going on. I'll likely have to loop back to this in another video soon. As I said, comparing this to best bike split, maybe we get the best of both worlds. We'll see. With that ride complete, let's jump over to Garmin Connect and have a look at the new metrics they report here. So actual stamina, potential stamina, they were data fields I could have had on the head unit, not something I've looked into very closely whatsoever. Looking at the power guide, this will give a breakdown of the pacing strategy that it gave me there out on the road. So what time, distance, average power, goal power. Apparently I was having the day off if the goal power was that low. Okay, something's going on there. And you'll get a breakdown of all the, well, this is only 25. I don't know what happened to the other 5. However, the ride is broken down so you can see how you performed in each of the splits. There's new ClimbPro information here in Garmin Connect. This has only given us 3 of the 5, although I did do 4 of the climbs. Not quite sure what's going on there. However, there are some new sections here to dive into and figure out what's going on. From here, we can have a look at the climb information and my performance on each of those climbs. So I guess next time I do this loop, I can do some comparisons. And climb number 3, not quite sure where climb number 4 went to. And lastly, there is some solar charge information. I've never got it to report anything other than not enough data, so 3 minutes ride time gained on a very, very cloudy winter's day here in Ballarat. A few more stats on the solar side of things, and another ride that I completed outdoors was an hour 27 on a partly cloudy day and partly sunny. That resulted in plus 11 minutes of charge, and the one very sunny day we've had here in the last 2 weeks, I put this unit out in the direct sunlight for just under 50 minutes, and that resulted in plus 27 minutes of charge. So not insignificant. Now touching again on the pacing metrics, stamina, etc. Now I see where things are going with this, and it's good to put on the spec sheets and things, but look, the power guide takes a little bit to set up, or more accurately to fine tune for the exact ride that you'll be doing. And as I've already mentioned, it's really not going to be that useful trying to micromanage a ride that you're doing with a bunch or in a mass start event where someone else is dictating the pace. There are so many variables involved here, and encouraging people to put their nose on their computer rather than up the road. I mean, I'm all for technology, I'm all for guidance. I'm just not quite sure I'm sold on this. So I am wondering how useful this will be and who will use it. I respect there are use cases for this, most likely for solo competitions, triathlon, Ironman, time trials. But for me, what I'd love to see is metrics on here that are more environmental. Tell me about the climbs that are coming up. Tell me about the heat maps that I can read easily on here when I'm riding along for any detours I might need to take. Those things would be useful, unless you live in a flat country. I guess what I'm getting at is that I like to see metrics that I can use at all times on the handlebars, not just when we line all the ducks up with a predefined course, a predefined pacing strategy, and even telling the computer here what position that duck will be riding his bike in. Sometimes it's about getting out and just riding our bike. And I do question adding all these features on top of what's already there. Is it getting too much? And that's coming from someone who does love technology and numbers on head units. Anyhow, that's a discussion for another day. It's there. That's how it works. I'm keen to hear some feedback on that. Alrighty, this has been a long video, so let's get around to wrapping this one up for the second time. A complete wrap up of this one with an even shorter question of, is it worth upgrading? If you're from a 1030 Plus to this, look, probably not. You saw the side-by-side, the functionality, the features. The user interface is a little different, but the 1030 Plus is a very, very capable unit that'll last for a few more years yet. If you're coming from the 1030, that thing's getting a little sluggish. And just like upgrading from an iPhone 11 to an iPhone 13 or an iPhone 10 to an iPhone 12, you're skipping one generation, you will notice a big difference. So coming from an older unit, I'd go with a yes. And as mentioned earlier on, if you're coming from a 1000, a 520, or even an 820, it's about now you're probably getting a very, very degraded battery performance. So this would be a worthy contender to have a look into if you're after the premium range. Let's not forget that these aren't cheap. Anyhow, that's a wrap on this one. As always, be sure to check out everybody else's reviews. I'm sure we've got different angles on things. Make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, there's a thanks button, and there's probably other buttons coming along too. But for now, I'm off for a ride to press more buttons on this thing. Thanks for watching.